Hi friends, Aitherea here, and today I want to talk about how important it is to try and keep a good attitude when you're gaming, especially in a game like Final Fantasy XIV that does have such a social aspect because it is an MMORPG. And I think it's important to be positive, I guess, throughout any level of the game, whether you're doing like a level 50 or below roulette, or whether you're doing a savage raid or chaotic. And chaotic is the thing that really got me thinking about this because I kind of noticed that it left me, it made me a way that I've never really been before. Like, I was always the kind of person where, even though I'm pretty confident in my ability to do mechanics right for any given raid that I'm experienced with, I'm always the kind of person that I'll see those like 3 wipes to span parties or like know your stuff, and they kind of do like scare me away, and they feel too serious, and they, just feel like, oh man, like if I make even a single mistake in that party, they're gonna call me out and it's gonna be a bad time. And I've always just kind of felt, I don't want to call those parties toxic because they aren't always, they're just people that want to get stuff done, but it, to me, always like worried me that it would be a toxic environment, that it would be too serious, too much pressure, people always picking on the smallest mistakes. So I always was kind of afraid of those parties. But then when chaotic came around, I ended up being the one making those parties. I actually did make a few 3-wipe disband parties, and I would actively look for those kinds of parties, and even some of the parties that were like have 5+ clears, have 10+ clears, because chaotic was such a frustrating experience that I got to the point where I was like, no, like, let's get down to business. If you're not confident, I don't want you in my party. I'm trying to get something done. It's been a frustrating enough experience as it is. And we have never seen the level of toxicity in this game that we are seeing now because of chaotic. Like, the entire time that I was doing chaotic, I would say like 50% of the parties that I was in, if not more, there was always at least 1 or 2 people who would be picking on players in alliance chat, making passive-aggressive comments, even if they weren't about a specific person, just stuff like that. It was really quite bad, and it really does rub off on you a little bit, and I realized it rubbed off on me because I was having certain thoughts going into other content after chaotic, which I will get to in a moment. But I do want to just talk a little longer about chaotic because I think it's very relevant to like my experience and why I'm making this video. And so I really remember, like, when I was trying to get my clear, I joined a strict group that was one of these parties that was saying stuff like memers will be kicked, or like, know your stuff or you will be removed, like these kind of like threatening party finders, because I was at the point where I was like, I know this fight really well, I just want to get clear. And so I remember joining this really strict group that was like consistently removing people. I think sometimes they would remove like an entire alliance. It was crazy. And the morale in there was incredibly low. The aesthetic, the environment was toxic as hell. It was really, really bad. And it wasn't any better than any of the other parties. That's the thing, is that this party was kind of in a way worse because they were constantly removing people. So instead of like having time for everyone to kind of like shake off the rust, make the mistakes they're going to make, and then correct themselves, it was like this constant revolving door because it's like, okay, these people don't know the fight, we're kicking them, that sort of deal. But it was a really toxic environment because the chat in there was super toxic. It was constantly people just like picking on other people, like I said, constantly passive aggressive or even just full-on aggressive remarks, like so much toxicity. It was horrible. I don't remember how long I stayed in that group. It probably wasn't more than like an hour, but it got to a point where I was like, this group isn't getting anywhere either. It's super toxic. My morale is like below the floor. My morale is below the ground, okay? Like, it's not even just like my morale has hit the floor. It's gone below. My morale has dug 12 feet deep into the ground because that's how toxic this party was. So I remember leaving this party and going into a different clear party where people were in a much better mood. People were being more supportive. They were saying like, hey, look, we got this far in the fight, or like, we saw it in rage, we can totally do it. Like, people were so much more positive. so much more positive. There wasn't any passive aggressive comments. People weren't complaining. None of that kind of stuff. It was a much more friendly environment, an environment that felt like we're all a team and we're working on this together. And it like, even though I was in this toxic party before that, I was tired, I was feeling so demotivated, and I was thinking about quitting, and I probably should have stopped for the night, but it was funny because getting into this party, I actually did feel so much better just because the attitude of the people around me was so much more positive that it made me feel better and it rubbed off on me, and I was able to continue working on this fight, trying to get my clear, because I was in this party that had such a better attitude that it lifted me up. It took me out of that grave that that my morale was in, and we came back above the ground, okay, and we actually had a little bit of hope. And I don't think I ended up clearing with that party, but I still appreciate them, and it's part of the reason that I'm making this video, because it just is like this lived experience that proved to me how important it is to be positive, to be friendly, to have a good attitude, and if you don't have one, to just shut the F up. Like, don't talk, and maybe take a break if you're really at that point. So kind of moving on with this, I was saying that the toxicity from chaotic, I felt rubbed off on me. It left a little residual on me, and I am a little embarrassed to admit it, and I feel sorry about this, and I feel sorry that I felt this way. But so I was one night doing chaotic, or I was trying to, and then my static pinged like our whole group, and they were like, hey, we're doing P12S unsynced for the axolotl mount. Does anyone want to come? And I was like, you know what? Chaotic has been a drag. I really don't want to do it anymore. I don't think I'd been doing it for that long that day. I'm like, let me go with my friends, these people that I like, that I enjoy hanging out with. Let me do something I actually like, want to do and enjoy, and people that I like spending time with. Like, let me do that. So I ditched chaotic and I went with them instead, and we didn't have a full party. We were missing, I think, like 2 people. Because that group that we have, like, we've got a bunch of people. Sometimes we have more than a full party, sometimes not everyone can make it, and it was just kind of like a casual, like, hey, who wants to kind of thing, and we didn't have a full 8. So I remember we got this tank, and if you're watching, I sincerely apologize. Please don't feel bad. This is all me. This is all me being toxic. It's not you. But we got this tank, and most of us were at different levels of, like, whether we'd been through P12S or not. Like, I had never been there at all. And then some of the people from my static we were kind of at varying levels of experience, right? But I'd never even stepped foot in there, and neither had this tank. So one of the first few mechanics in P12S, you have the party in the back and the tanks in the front, and the tanks have to invuln. And someone in the group explained to this tank that we got from Party Finder, it wasn't somebody that we knew, that they need to invuln this mechanic. And they said, okay, can you tell me what the skill is called? Because I can do it, but I don't know what that is. And I thought, this person doesn't know what their invuln is. I thought, oh my god, we are gonna be here forever, we're never gonna clear. And I started having like all these like toxic feelings about it, right? Where I was just like, oh my god, we've got this like total noob who like doesn't know what they're doing. Like, those were the kinds of feelings that I was starting to have. And some of you might be thinking like that my feelings are justified. But here's what I want to say. Not only did this person do the thing well, because once we told them what the name of their invuln was, what the skill was called, they did just fine. Later, I had missed a day of prog, because P12S, even unsynced, is actually quite punishing, because the majority of the mechanics are every single person has to do it perfectly, or you wipe, like the entire group wipes. It's like body check after body check. So even unsynced, like, you have to do all of the mechanics correctly. Like, it's not something you can just YOLO, like, you literally have to know what you're doing, unfortunately. So I missed a day with them, and so I didn't know a certain mechanic when I came in with them later. And not only did this person that I was thinking in my head toxically the first time that they were like a noob and it was going to take us forever, they, when I came back, knew how to do the mechanic that I didn't know how to do, and were explaining it to me. To me, this person that, like, I'm not like a super raider or anything. I've done like 2 tiers now and like the chaotic raid and a bunch of extremes, right? Like, I'm not like a crazy, I've never done an ultimate, but still, me, someone with raiding experience, who was like thinking that they're a noob and whatnot, and who I've like quote unquote bragged before about how good I'm. Listen, I'm a gray parser, okay? I'm not especially good. I just feel like I'm a relatively decent learner, and I'm decently good at mechanics, okay, as long as I'm not distracted. So I'm not trying to say that I'm like the best player ever. I've never tried to say that, but some people absolutely take what I'm saying and run with it and decide that I am an egotistical maniac. But anyways, this person came back and told me how to do the mechanics and explained it to me. And if that doesn't show you that I was just completely wrong in my judgment of them, like, do you get my point here? The point I'm making is that I had this residual feeling because chaotic had been so frustrating for me and had made me have, like, I don't know if the right word is higher expectations or what, but it had just kind of changed my perspective on things a little bit because it was such a frustrating experience that it made me like more judgmental and stuff. Where this person, I have no idea if they have any raiding experience prior to this because I didn't ask them, and yes, this is an unsynced, so it is easier. Even though the body check's still body check, it is an easier fight. But that doesn't really matter because I think what I'm trying to get at here is that what they needed in order to do this kind of fight that, like I said, you still can't ignore the mechanics, was just an environment that allowed them to learn it and to be able to do it, and they didn't even take that long to learn. You know what I mean? So it was completely me being toxic. And that's something that I love about my static, is that they are some of the most friendly people I have ever met in the game. It's crazy how friendly they are because none of them sleep. Like, normally when I don't sleep, I don't have a good attitude. Like, I can be a total biatch, okay? Like, I need to get my beauty sleep or it's not going to be beautiful for the people around me. Trust me, I can be irritable. Where half of the people in my static are like going to bed really late and waking up really early for work, and they'll be like, I got 2 hours of sleep, and they're still so friendly. It's crazy. I'm like, how can you still be so nice? Like, I wouldn't even be here. I'd be sleeping. I'd be taking a nap. But I just feel like spending time with them helped me detox, like quite literally, and helped me remember like how important it is to just be nice and to just be friendly. Because I feel like for them, like when it comes to hardcore stuff in the game, like Savage and whatnot, obviously, yes, we all have our own goals. We all have our own expectations. And, you know, if you are a seasoned veteran who's really, really good, then you might not necessarily be interested in training newer players. And that's fine. You don't have to. That's not what I'm saying. But I find it refreshing how friendly my static is, because they're not the type to like quickly jump on and judge and be like, oh my god, these people suck or whatever. Like, they can be very open to having new players in, and they're so friendly and they're so helpful. And like I said, they just create this environment that is really positive and good for everyone, and it focuses more on like the fun of the thing and the fun of being together as friends than on like, we must clear this today. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like when you think about an MMO, it's supposed to be a social game. Like, what is it supposed to be about? And obviously that's for all of us to decide individually. But I feel like a lot of times, especially when I think back to my experiences with MMOs when I was younger and when I first started playing, the majority of the fun that I had was absolutely with other people. In fact, a lot of those games sucked. They were terrible. But what kept me playing them for years was the people that I was playing them with and the friends that I had made. And I feel like my static is kind of reminding me of that. And now that's not to say that we've never had instances where we were working through like the current Savage tier and we got a fill, and we have had some weird things happen in Party Finder before where we have kicked people, and maybe some of the people in the static decided to blacklist them, maybe some didn't, but in general, they are just an incredibly friendly group that is more, it seems like for them, it's more about the experience and having fun with each other than being toxic or being like, it's not that they don't have a goal, like obviously they want to clear, but I don't know, it just to me seems like their priorities are in a good place. And yeah, I think that's just a fantastic thing, and it's really nice. I feel really lucky to have met them. So I think another thing to note in terms of this positivity is also when you're doing lower level content. If you see someone who's struggling, I think a lot of us, we want to help that person. Like, there's kind of two reactions. One will be like they're doing it wrong and we want to help them because we know they're doing it wrong or whatever. But then there's also the people that are like annoyed that people are doing stuff wrong, not even just in lower level content. There's always been this sentiment of like, you're max level. You've gotten all the way to max level, so you should know what you're doing by now. And while I do understand where that's coming from, I also feel like some people are just bad at video games, and it's like a normal mode roulette. It's not a big deal. Some people just need more room and more time to practice, and maybe they're on a different job than they normally play. We don't really know, and I feel like it's important to be positive and have grace for these people, and it's okay to try to help them, and yeah, just don't be a jerk. And if it's something where like, because I was in a Uewawada station, I call it Uewawada. I was in there and we had like a good 4 wipes because I was an undergeared warrior and I just couldn't keep myself alive at the boss once the healer died, and the healer kept dying and they weren't that great at healing. It was a whole thing. And I stuck around because I was in a good mood and I just kind of wanted to help these people. But I know some people would be like, that many wipes, it took you like an hour. I think it was like 45 minutes to an hour. A lot of people wouldn't stick around, and that's fine, but don't be a jerk is just my thing. It's just don't be a jerk. And so the other thing I was saying is sometimes we want to help people. And I think that's totally fine to want to give people advice because you see that they're doing something wrong. But you have to be careful about how you approach it because you don't want to sound like you're super judgmental or rude or whatnot. I think Keitsu Chaiji has a really good video about this, about like how to approach it. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just ask people. I'll be like, hey, do you mind if I give you some advice? If they don't answer, I don't say anything more. If they say no, I don't say anything more. But if they say yes, I'll be like, okay, cool. So here's something that you can do as a healer. Try using Essential Dignity at this point, or like that kind of thing, or like make sure to keep regen on the tank the entire time, like both while they're running, after it falls off, and that'll help you keep up with the damage coming from the mobs. Like, that's the kind of thing that I'll do, is I will ask first and then give advice. And so again, it's fine if you want to help, but if you're just that person who's frustrated because you're in a roulette of any level, but especially lower levels where it's like they're not even near max level, it's like 50, 60 below, even Stormblood, 70s and below, like whatever. Like, why do you feel the need to be toxic and be a jerk if someone isn't playing? Like, most of these people are new to the game and they're sprouts. Of course, they don't know how to play, so your attitude isn't helpful. But you'll find that whenever you do have a positive attitude and you are being genuinely helpful, and also using the method of like giving a compliment before you give a critique, like being like, hey, you're doing really great keeping up with the healing, but it could be easier for you if you tried using this skill, that kind of thing. When you lift people up and you tell them that they're doing a good job, and things like that, this really helps them, because even if you're giving advice alongside that, they're not taking it as a judgment or as an insult or as any of those things. They're like, hey, this community is so great, it's so helpful, it's so friendly, it's so nice, and it makes them keep wanting to play, and it might make them keep wanting to try and even keep wanting to get better. Because there are some people where when they encounter toxicity, and obviously we all should try and build up a little bit of a thick skin to this kind of thing. But there are some people who are really sensitive, and the moment like one bad thing is said to them, they're like, I'm doing everything with trusts, I'm doing everything with duty support, or healing, I'm not going to try healing anymore because I had this bad experience with someone telling me that I sucked and I didn't know how to heal and blah, 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 blah. So I'm just going to play DPS. And it's like, you should be able to play and to try whatever role that you want. Don't be scared away from it because somebody was mean to you. It's okay to be bad, okay? It's okay to be bad. Everybody has to start somewhere, and it takes time and practice and doing things over and over again before you get good. I do savage raids, but do you think that I am good at them immediately? No, not at all. I use a lot of skills during prog that I won't use once I've done the fight, 5, 10 times, because now I know the mechanics well enough and I know how the group is mitting and all these different little factors that now I can better plan out my skills and play more optimally than I ever could while I was progging because I didn't know the fight. So it's okay to be bad and it's okay to not know things. You will learn in time. But overall, the point here is that if you are someone who knows things, that you should just try your best to be positive and have a good attitude. And if you're doing endgame stuff like chaotic that can lead to a lot of frustration, I think it's really important to know when to take a step back, when to take a break. Because I definitely probably should have taken a break from chaotic a handful of times. There was so many times that I was getting to the point where I was just getting really frustrated. I wasn't having fun anymore. And the thing is, it's not a bad fight. It's actually a really cool fight. There's a lot of things about the fight that I really like, especially from a healer standpoint. I really like how the tank is consistently taking autos so that I, as a sage, I usually play white mage, but I've got most of my clears in chaotic as a sage because that's just what the party finder wants. But I, as a sage, get to use things like Haima, which I often feel like I don't have a lot of opportunities to use. So it is a really cool fight with some really cool and fun mechanics, and it allows me to spread my wings as a healer in ways that I feel like I don't often get to do. But it simultaneously can be a really frustrating experience when you're going at it for hours and hours. And I'll probably not learn my lesson because I'm stupid and, well, okay, I shouldn't say that about myself, but let's be real. Even though I'm saying this now, I have a feeling in the future that I'm not going to take my own advice because I'm just, we're all like this. It's human nature. But it is good. And I want to try and get better at this. It's not going to happen for me overnight, but this is a skill I want to work on. And that skill is taking a step back and saying, this game is supposed to be fun. Games are for fun. You play games for fun, for entertainment, for satisfaction, for something to do that isn't irritating, for relax. There's so many different reasons that I play games, right? And 14 encompasses a lot of them. It can be fun, it can be relaxation, it can be just a satisfying way to spend my time. Whatever it is, it's not supposed to be frustrating, it's not supposed to be overly stressful or any of these kinds of things. So if I get to a point where I'm not having fun, my morale is 12 feet deep in the ground, and I'm just frustrated and stressed out and angry and irritated and all these things, then I think it's time to stop.
It's time to stop!
You know what I mean? I think it's time to take, even if it's just a 30-minute break or like an hour-long break, it's time to step away and calm down, do something else that relaxes me, that I enjoy, whatever, and come back to it later. And if I have to, even just like taking a day, just being like, we're not doing this anymore today, we'll come back to it tomorrow, and doing that. And even though 14 doesn't have a ton of FOMO, I think what's so hard for me and probably other people is that we get addicted to like the goal. It's like, oh my God, I really, 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 really want this hair. I struggle with patience. I'm a very impatient person sometimes. So I'm just like, I really want this hair. And I would say my impatience usually has to do with I don't like waiting. Like I hate waiting in queues because I usually am a white mage, or like a healer. I usually play healer or tank. I rarely play DPS. So if I ever have to wait in queues, I'm like so bad at it. I hate waiting for party finders to fill. I hate waiting. I'm really impatient with waiting. And then when I want something and I want it badly, I want it now, to the point that like I've skipped really cool stories, like the Evilise raids. I've like skipped the entire story just because I wanted something that came at the end. And that's like one of my like definitely toxic traits that I need to work on. But yeah, I can be really impatient. So I understand why I struggle, and I understand why other people struggle, because you're like, you see this reward, you really want it, you really want to keep working towards it. And then because the fight is frustrating, sometimes it can be frustrating, you're also just like, oh, I just want to get this over with. I don't want to have to do this for weeks. You want to go hard to get it done with sooner, right? So there's multiple reasons. This is all of these reasons that keep us from making the healthy choice of taking a step back, taking a break, and coming at it the next day or just later, whatever. So I do get it, and I think it's something that I need to work on, and I think it's something that probably a lot of us need to work on, but it's a healthy skill to know when to take a break so that you can come back to things refreshed with a good attitude. Be the person that brings the morale up in the group, because that's the coolest person to be. So I think that's pretty much everything that I wanted to say with this little talk. I'm sorry for my toxicity in the past, because I know every now and then I go on rants and I'm kind of toxic, and it is what it is, but we're all human, we're all imperfect, I'm not perfect, and I have feelings and thoughts and emotions and opinions, and I can be very strongly opinionated. It can be very passionately opinionated sometimes, but just so you all know, I'm okay. I'm not losing sleep at night over it. I'm actually losing sleep at night over my dog's stinky butt because he's having anal gland issues, but that is irrelevant, and we've had many vet visits already, and it's a whole thing. But anyways, that is all. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. So please consider leaving a sacrifice to Lord Algorithm in the form of a like, comment, share, or subscribe. As always, thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much to my channel members for supporting me. Bye!